here in just a few minutes. We always like to give a few minutes in advance just to let people kind of load into the meeting. We'll get started here in just shortly here. But Mark or Brian, anything exciting coming this week for you guys?
Oh, well, NPDA. So we got Dealer Connect is next month, but actually all the board members are flying up to Texas next week for a kind of a 2.5 day kind of plan out the future of what's going on. And then tomorrow, my wife has got the interview with the DoD in Germany. So probably decent chance that early next year I'll be broadcasting from either Stuttgart or Ramstein.
Wow. Well, that'll be a shift.
Yeah, a little bit. So
awesome. That's exciting.
My wife has been trying to ply me with schnitzel and streusel and all the straws. Getting ready for Germany.
I want to say I looked up your wife the other day on LinkedIn. Is she with the Department of Education?
Yeah. So it would it's not exactly a lateral transfer, but it's would still be a government to government position.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's exciting.
It'd be fun. I've lived in Germany before, so people ask. I mean, I've lived Spain, Zambia, France, Abu Dhabi, Germany, Saudi Arabia, and people ask, what's your favorite? And I'm like, yeah, wherever I'm at, it's good. So as long as I got a little property and place to go out and have fun, I'm good.
That sounds great.
I'm trying to remember on your LinkedIn post. I can't remember if it was a Honda unit or CF Moto, but anybody take you up on that, sending you that test model to be able to replace your background there?
Still got the Ducati, so but if CF Moto, if you're listening, so or if anybody's listening for that matter, not any used bikes, please. I don't need any old stuff, but I already got my own collection of old stuff. But any cool new sport bike that you'd like to have in the background displayed on all my webinars, send it.
And some good exposure.
Yeah, great.
Sure, that's great. Yeah.
Just finally cracked 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. So I was
dang.
Never thought that would happen.
Well, those LinkedIn commission checks will start to pay off nicely, right?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with that $5, but.
Oh man.
How about for you, Brian? Anything fun happening for you?
Here at Lightspeed, we just announced AI Command Center, which we are going to talk about today. So there's all the buzz right now at Lightspeed, from internal conversations to clients reaching out to us to want to see it, experience it, taste and touch it, and all those things. So we're going to get a chance to do those things on today's meeting. Outside of that, I am just looking out the window, the dog days of summer, looking forward to some fall foliage and temperatures. And to maybe get a cooler ride on the dirt bike than the sweltering heat of summer. So I'm looking forward to that.
What is your dirt bike? I'm assuming an Amig replica?
Well, Amig in 1997, when he was the champion, right? So his heyday, Kawasaki, of course. So granted, it's a 4-stroke. That 2-stroke is intriguing. At 327.
We got to go to one of the races down in Houston at the old, I guess it was the new stadium they already had up. And we were in the pits hanging out, and he was there, and he was on his bicycle pedaling, kind of keeping his cardio going. And then he hit the track. He was out in the track for like 30 minutes, and he came back and he wasn't even sweating. And I'm like, I was sweating just sitting there, and I was like, I guy's not human.
Yeah, these guys are amazing. I think, it also helps to be 20 years old or, be young. That makes a difference. But man, no kidding. I don't know if I told you this story, Mark and Brian, but I actually got exposed and got found out by Mr. Emig himself. Did I tell you the story of the AIM Expo when he came to the Lightspeed booth?
Not recently.
Oh, no. So this was a couple years ago, and we were at AIM Expo, and as you know, I use Jeff's name in all the sales deals and repair orders and everything, and we're going to see his name today in today's webinar. But and why, I guess I've just been a fan of his forever, and it's kind of an industry name that a lot of people know, so that's why. But nonetheless, we were at the booth. This was, I think, the last day of the trade show at AIM Expo. This was in the Las Vegas facility, and one of the sales reps happened to come across Jeff on the show floor and said, "Hey, Jeff, you mind come over and meet one of my buddies? So I'm standing at the booth, and here comes the salesman's name is Larry at Lightspeed, and he's dragging Jeff Emig towards the booth. And I see Jeff, and of course I'm just like starstruck, right? Because I'm fanboy and all that stuff. So Larry comes over and introduces me, and I say, hey, Jeff, I'm a huge fan. And by the way, the reason why Larry is introducing us is because we provide a business management solution for motorcycle dealerships, and I use your name in a lot of the demos and webinars. And he kind of looks at me puzzled, like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, come over here and look at this. So we had some monitors set up in the booth, and I pulled up a sales deal with his name, and I said, see how you're buying a KTM or a Husqvarna 125 right here? And then I pulled up a repair order, and see how you're a customer in here with a Winnebago RV and you're getting it serviced, and see on this parts invoice how you bought a fan belt. And he was just kind of looking at it sideways, and he was standing there with somebody else at the time, and he looks over at that guy and goes, I think we need to get our lawyers involved here. And of course, he was joking. And then he ended up spending the next 2 hours just sitting at the booth talking about football and about motorcycles and about some other things he's doing. Just a really neat experience. And so now he knows officially that his name shows up in Lightspeed webinars. So,
And then right after that, you got the restraining order. That's when that happened.
That's when that happened. Yeah. So I'm being very careful about the way I present his name now because of that, but he still allows me on occasion to do it. So.
Well, all right. We're just past the hour here, so we'll go ahead and get started. For everybody joining us, thank you for joining us today. It's Brian Tierney going to be presenting for us mainly, and Mark and I will just continue to poke and ask questions and try to challenge to see if we can get a little bit deeper into the conversation. For those who haven't joined one of these webinars before, we refer to it as the Three Amigos webinar series. So Brian Tierney is a Lightspeed expert. He's been with Lightspeed for over 30 years, very, very knowledgeable in all facets of Lightspeed, and has kind of worked in a lot of various positions there, and also worked in a dealership at one point as well. Mark Sheffield, he is an industry leader. I would say in the recreational dealership space. I think he's starting, even though he doesn't know it, he's expanding to other areas. However, powersports is his kind of bread and butter, where he also is the dealer principal, managed and facilitated 20 groups. And then I'm Brian Lucas, one of the partners here at the Accounting Guys. We're an accounting firm that specializes in Lightspeed and other dealership management system accounting. And so feel free to reach out to us for questions there as well. With this webinar, you can interact with us a little bit. There's a couple of different ways to do that. In the top left corner, you should see a chat option as well as a Q&A option. And so either one of those, Mark and I will be kind of reviewing as Brian is presenting and making sure that we can answer questions for you. So excited about today's topic being, your sales pipeline is talking. Are you listening? Excited, Brian. Thank you for taking the time to put this together. I like the little image that you got there, produced by AI. There, we keep getting a small, alterations for what everybody looks like there. So it's kind of fun to see. But Brian, go ahead and take it away for us.
Yeah, thanks for the introductions, Mr. Lucas, and thanks for being here, Mr. Sheffield. We certainly appreciate the audience as well being here. Wednesday's a tricky day for folks to take time away from their business, from their dealerships, to spend time with us, and we certainly appreciate it. And we thank you very much. By the way, no, that picture's not AI. That was when we were standing outside that dealership that day, and that's an actual photo. So anyway.
I hope my eyebrows are not that bad. So I'm going to the barber tomorrow.
My nose is getting a little flatter, and I might be a little bigger than that.
Well, we'll see what happens on the next mutation of images as we move forward, guys, as it continues to evolve and mutate, I guess. Anyway, so as Mr. Lucas had mentioned, the topic for today is really your sales pipeline is talking to you. Are you listening? And I think I've heard this from a number of folks on LinkedIn, at trade shows, in circles that all of us swim in. We could always do better at maintaining our pipelines, responding to customer leads and inquiries. I've seen some kind of damning statistics on what the recreation space feels is applicable and acceptable when it comes to timelines for responding to leads. And really the goal today is to talk about that a little bit. And I'm sure many of the folks on the call have already heard elements of that before. We'll reiterate some of those things and maybe even our own personal experiences with talking to dealers, whether we're pretending to be a customer or actually are a consumer. And in many cases, we've done both, and to see what the response rates are and what's happening from a consumer perspective at dealerships. And it's always an eye-opening experience to hear those things. So in terms of today, for what we've kind of teed up as an agenda piece, we are going to talk about some settings, and we are focusing on Lightspeed clearly. So these settings are going to be related to setting up salespeople and setting up follow-up chains and setting up stages and elements that you might employ to be more effective in your sales module, whether you're using CRM in Lightspeed or you're just simply using sales to manage leads and deals. So we'll talk about those settings and what they mean and why they matter. We'll show some examples of workflow when things are set up properly, or at least at what I feel like is proper. And that's subjective. We may even have some discussion around that today, I'm sure. We'll look at some lead flow, workflow suggestions and examples. I'll showcase a new tool, and it's new, I guess, in relative terms. 43 years in dealership management solutions, Lightspeed has been. Sound like Yoda there. But there's a new tool inside of the sales module called Insights. And there's a salesperson facing insight and a manager facing insight. We'll talk about those and why they matter in the context of workflow. We will spend some time on AI Command Center, and that's the hot buzz right now here at Lightspeed. We just did a big launch yesterday, webinar featuring the AI Command Center by the folks that built it. And lots of interest, lots of discussion inside and outside of the organization around that. But we'll give you a chance to see what it looks like, and we'll test some queries. And then we'll kind of take what we've learned in the settings and in the workflow and insights, and maybe even with AI Command Center and analytics, and we'll look at loyalty, and we'll look at how we can measure retention. And there's a report card number that we'll be able to look at. Now, if you've been on webinars with us in the past, and we thank you for doing that, we've talked a little bit about this on other webinars, but some of this might be new to you, and we hope that you learned something through today's webinar. So we're going to start by just talking about some of the foundations. What are the settings, the basics that you need to have in place for all of this to work properly? When I say all of this, for the insights to work, for follow-up chains to work, for the workflow process that we're going to go through to work, there's some things that you really need to have in place. And we're going to dissect those now, from setting up basic settings for salespeople, setting up your stages, setting up sources, follow-up chains, and even using alerts to make sure that folks in your sales department and your sales floor know what's going on at any given time. But before we get into those settings, I'm going to just open up Lightspeed and talk about some of the workflow, and it'll kind of set the stage for why those settings matter and where they live in the software. So as we're looking at Lightspeed now, I'm going to first just open up two screens. We're going to go to Sales this time, and we're going to go to Manager Insights, and I'm going to have this screen open while I'm looking at another screen called Leads, Quotes, and Deals in the Jeff Emig Supercenter here. And as I'm looking at the Leads, Quotes, and Deals screen, some of you may be familiar with this screen, and you're looking at yours and you're looking at mine and thinking things look different. A couple of things that we'll just speak to. One of the new revelations that I got recently, even though I've been using Lightspeed for decades, is setting up your column option. So first of all, as I'm looking at this list, I can see the store that the lead exists in. I can see the deal date, when the conversation began with the customer, deal number, customer name, and I really want to focus for a minute on a column that's listed as stage name. Now, in that stage name column, I've got a series of phrases like greet the customer, consult with the customer, identify the proper unit, demo the unit, negotiate pricing, and maybe close the sale. And in this environment, I've got 10 steps to the sale. Now, it's not unusual for dealerships to have maybe 2 steps, greet the customer, sell the unit. And some dealerships have a very lengthy series of steps, maybe 30 steps to get to the goal of selling the unit. And they have their reasons as to why. We're going to talk about some of those in a moment. But I really want to kind of focus on the stage name, which is also where those colors, the yellows, the purples, the greens are coming from. And I'm going to show you in the software where that is set up initially. But as you're looking at your screen, again, you're looking at mine, you may notice some differences. One is you may not see the colors, and you may not see the column listed as stage on yours, because by default, stage name is not a column that shows up in your default column selections. So how does it get there? Well, one of the things is you're going to right-click on this dark blue banner at the top of each of these columns. It brings open a column options menu where you can pick and choose what column is relevant to your personal experience in Lightspeed. Because what I think is relevant might be different than what Mark thinks is relevant and what Brian thinks is relevant. It's really kind of a personal preference on what I prefer to look at when I'm looking at my Lightspeed screen. And that's true across the entire business management solution. But stage
Brian,
name is, yes.
one thing I would add is that those have evolved over time. And I think as dealers have asked for more items in there, they have actually been added. So if you look for something a couple of years ago and it wasn't there, go back and look again, because you may find that some of the stuff that you want has been added to it.
The new thing I saw, I think you made a post about this on LinkedIn, Brian, was the in the row
Right.
options as well. So you've got your column option,
Yes.
but your row option to determine how large you want it to be, to maybe zoom in a little bit closer,
Right.
which is nice.
Yeah, so I appreciate you bringing that up. You're right. There are new items to select from that add additional context to your sales experience and may add some relevance to your processes. But that default row height, I'm going to probably sound terrible to say this, but in many cases, when I'm talking to a client and they're seeing Lightspeed for the first time, they'll sometimes say, "Gosh, your system looks a little bit dated." Well, what's interesting about newer platforms is the field sizes tend to be bigger. So in a tongue-in-cheek, maybe a cheat way for me to make the software look a little bit more modern, if you change your row heights, it tends to make the spaces look bigger, makes the software look a little more modern. But for me, with my 51-year-old eyes, it just makes it easier for me to see the darn screen, because sometimes I'll look at this thing and it just goes into a blur. Back to being 20 again, right? How would that be? Anyway, so that's kind of a little bit of a depiction of this screen. But why I brought this screen up in the context of today's discussion was to kind of point at sales manager insights. And really what I wanted to focus on here, and really kind of setting the stage where the next subject we're going to get into is setting up some of these things, is the sales pipeline view that you see on Insights, which right now is showing 62 open deals. And it's also giving me an idea of where those deals live in the hierarchy of stages. Are they at the beginning? Are they at the middle? Or are they at the end? Now, if I'm a sales manager and I just want a one-stop shop to see exactly what's going on the showroom floor right now, I can see there's 62 deals. And I might also notice a pattern that things seem to be getting stuck at this identify unit, demo unit on site stage. What's going on there? And that might be a cue for me as a manager to go and talk to my sales staff to ultimately get those stages moved down to the bottom, which that's when everybody wins. That's when the smiles come from the customers because they got their new motorcycle. That's when the salespeople get paid because they get their commission, and that's when the business makes money. Now, speaking of money, I can also see the revenue per stage in the process, and as I move those stages down to the bottom, those numbers start to pile up where it really matters. Now, we'll come back to this in a little bit more detail when we talk about workflow and some of the other elements that live on this page. But let's talk about where some of the setups live that contribute to the detail on those screens. Are we seeing any questions that we should talk about at all yet, folks?
I think we're good to keep going.
We're doing
Nothing popped up. Can you just go back to that screen though? I just wanted to point one thing out.
Insights or leads?
Yeah, where you had the stages and the colors on the stages.
Okay.
Just for me, kind of a personal thing, and I see this all the time, is that once dealers figure out they can change the colors on those stages, they tend to go in there, and at least from kind of my OCD point of view, if you can set those colors up to kind of follow a logical system, you think about your stoplight, you go from green to orange, to yellow to red. I think that all these colors look great in theory, but then when you go to start using them, they don't tell you a whole lot. And if you kind of follow, some logical order, I think those colors kind of start to help you manage that system a little bit better too.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah, so clearly we are not following any kind of pattern other than we're pastel, so it looks very spring and Easterish on our sales floor today. So where does that live? Well, let's talk about it. We're going to go to sales. Now, mind you, some of these screens that I'm going to go into, I'll just remind folks, because I think this has come up in previous webinars as well, permissions, right? So if I'm a sales manager, if I'm a salesperson, if I'm somebody in the dealership that's following along on their screen, and you're going into lists where I'm headed next, and I'm going to take us into stages, and you don't see that, well, that's going to be related to your own personal profile underneath your security selection. Now, just so you know, for those that are curious, if you go into system and security, that's where your permissions live, and you may not have access to that. So for some of the things we're going to refer to today, you may need to lean on your administrator, your owner, your manager to get access to some of these things if it's pertinent, or work with them to open up some of these functions. Just thought I would mention that.
Is there somewhere somebody can go that would actually be like a master list of what all the functions are? Just because, I tend to run into a lot of times somebody doesn't know that something is available in a system, but they can't even see that menu item, so they've never thought to ask.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right? That's a good question. I feel like, and I'm going to probably have to go back to the Get Help button. So for folks on the call, if you're curious about where some of that self-help content might live, if you press Get Help, it is going to launch your Lightspeed support portal, where I would encourage, if you don't, to create a login so that you can log into that portal. And inside of Lightspeed support is a knowledge base. And this is where I'm just going to go and I'm going to search. We're going to do this in real time. I might embarrass myself. But as your support portal launches, you're going to have access to some of those webinars we talked about earlier on the AI Command Center and other features and functions within the program. News about things that are coming in the future, past webinars and materials, but the knowledge base is right here. If you press knowledge, you can then search for, let's say, security. And it is going to bring up a list of documents that, a little bit like Google or ChatGPT, sometimes I'll say, kind of walks you through some of the settings related to security. So I imagine that there is probably a document here, Mark, but for the specific and all of the individual pieces, it's probably going to bounce us around to some specific areas. But good point, good suggestion. This is a good place to look. In addition to that, so for folks that do have access to security, one of the more recent innovations that live in security profiles are roles. So there's a series of definitions for what people do in your business, like technician or salesperson or cashier or accountant. And underneath each of these role names are the permissions that we've determined over the last 43 years in the DMS space are pertinent to that person's role. And I like to use the term conservative permissions because it's almost as though, in my experience, when I grant permissions to somebody, it feels like a reward. When I take permissions away, it feels like a penalty. Even if that person doesn't know anything about the permission I took away, it feels like I'm just insulting them or I'm penalizing them. So in my mind, it's easier to grant and more comfortable to grant permissions than take them away. But if you assign permissions based on roles, you can always open up additional permissions based on that user. But then going back to what you said, Mark, you don't know what you don't know. So as you're looking at some of these descriptions, if you see a permission and it seems like it makes sense, it might be something you can look up in the Get Help button or certainly reach out to our support team. We might be able to guide you through it because there's a lot there. Well, let's go back to some of the settings. Something popped up on my screen here. Okay, we're going to go to sales. We're going to come down to lists. And I'm going to start, if I can get there, to stages. And this is where those colors are set up and also the phrases and terms. And, someone might ask, is there a limit? I imagine there's a limit somewhere, but it's probably in the millions. And nobody's going to have a million stages in their system. But as mentioned in this experience, I have, is it 11? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One of them do not delete. So there's a reason for that. But as I'm looking at each of these, they're quite honestly just phrases that we've determined make sense for us. And I like to use the numbers because when I'm sorting that column, it helps me to put it into an order that makes sense for me as opposed to alphabetization. I'll use the numbers. So the O1 greet, and then maybe the next one is O2 guest. When I'm sorting my leads, quotes, and deals screen by stage name, and the way I do that is I click on the word stage name at the top of that column, and it places this little triangle that shows me with the triangle tipped up, the point upwards, it's putting the ones, the twos, the threes in order. If I flip it upside down by clicking one more time, it changes the sort. So the Z's and the 10s are at the bottom and my 1s and A's are at the top, or vice versa. So I can change the sort hierarchy by clicking on that column, and that triangle that appears as a result is what I'm sorting by. Now, some folks might say, well, I want to sort by stage, but then I want to sort by make, or I want to sort by name. You can. And this is one of those kind of hidden menu features where if I want to sort by stage first and maybe customer name second, I'm going to hold my control key down on the keyboard while I'm clicking on the second column, and a second triangle appears. And if I want a third triangle, like sort again by stock number, I can put a third triangle, and you'll notice that the triangles start to shrink as opposed to growing like Mark's eyebrows on that picture. It's shrinking, showing me this. showing me the hierarchy of sort. The largest triangle is the first sort, second largest is second sort, third largest is third sort.
Covering them up.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I wouldn't cover those up.
I'll put my Lightspeed bed down on.
You might be able to hide a hot dog or a hamburger in there for later in case you get hungry.
I feel like I had a gerbil walking across my forehead. So
Awesome.
We're going all Lightspeed today.
Awesome.
No,
okay, we'll take
no
it.
eyebrows. So I'm going for that Brett Michaels look.
We'll take it. We'll take it. All right, so back to stages. This is, again, we're in sales list stages, and you may already see some there. And if you do see them, great. If you want to add a color to them, if we go into one of those stages, I can click the stage color, and I can pick and choose. Back to Mark's point, maybe the reds are at the top of your stages, and as you move down to the bottom, that's the green, or some combination of those that makes a little more sense than my, I don't know, barf of spring colors on this screen. So use those to help guide you through the sales process. It will help to provide some meaning and context into the Manager Insights Hub, so the managers and salespeople can see where you're at in the process.
One thing I like to point out here is the stages are meant for like Lightspeed, I would say, has two versions of stages, because you have a lead, a quote, and a deal, and a finalized deal, which are like statuses in the system. I guess that's a status in Lightspeed. You could also think of it like a stage, but then these are subcategories to those stages. And so you might see some of these, greet the guest, or first presentation of the unit, and that's done during a lead, and you may not see as many of them during the deal stage. But before you just create 30 stages, I would think about the people that you have, and are they actually going to change the box? How are they going to use it? And at the same time, I would encourage that you definitely use more. The more that you use, the more information you can receive, and the more insight you're going to have into the pipeline process. But this is a conversation for sure to have with the sales manager and the sales team to find out, what are the important points that tell us where this is at, so that if you got hit by a bus, we know where everything lives, right?
Yeah, good point. Good point. We should point out also, and you'll find this to be true when you're building your stages or you're adding to them or modifying them, is there is a stage order code, if you will. So if I go back to my list of stages, that stage order kind of puts into this list the organization of those stages. What's the first? What's the second? What's the third? That stage order is kind of be a default, and you can use that. And you can modify those as you're inserting stages between. So if I'm putting a stage between greet the guest and guest consult, I might use 15 as my stage order. And the reason that's pertinent is it doesn't necessarily correlate to the leads, quotes, and deals screen, but it definitely correlates into where things fall on the pipeline view of insights. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. It'll put it in order based on that, what did we call that, stage order code. So something to consider. So now that we've established our stages and we're defining where we are from beginning to middle to finish, it could be 2 stages, could be 30. It's really up to the business, what makes the most sense to them. A couple of other things that we'll look at when it comes to setup is we're going to go to sales lists and salespeople for a moment. And this is where you can set up your individual salespeople that have overriding commission values. And when I say overriding, we may know that in system preferences, there's a blanket commission value that you can apply to salespeople. And then you can come in and change the commission structure based on an individual person. So based on seniority, based on product types, based on whether they're a back end or a front end salesperson, you can assign commission percentages to that individual. Now, with that in mind, the piece that I really wanted to focus on is work info. What day of the week does the salesperson work? We are identifying the 7 days of the week. And we can also identify a little bit more information about that individual. How many leads are they working on? Where are they in terms of stages? How many have they sold and sold them out? So we can see some information, but we're going to utilize the work days as we kind of talk about workflow in a moment. And how does a salesperson know they've got something to do? So we're going to define when they work and why that matters in a second. Now, with that, one other function that lives in lists is round robins. And I've heard some controversy and some differing opinions on round robins. And round robins, I always thought it was kind of a goofy term for a list of salespeople. And the salespeople list, by tradition, oh, there's an empty one. That's awesome. By tradition, is an alphabetized list of people. And it could be your powersports team versus your marine team versus your RV team, or off-road versus on-road, or you can also define them by vehicle type. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. Is a lot of times folks will say, well, I don't just want an alphabetized list of all my salespeople so that Anthony gets the first lead of the day and Brian gets the second and Charlie gets the third. I want to define my off-road team, my watercraft team, and my street team to get the leads based on the products that they're specializing in. Vehicle types gives you the ability to really fine tune your round robin. So when those leads start coming into the system, it sends the lead to the proper team. And then from in order of alphabetization, those leads get dispersed among those round robin groups based on vehicle types or based on specific makes. If I just want my Honda leads to go to this group and my Kawasaki leads to go to that group, we can use those definitions as well. So with that in mind, now that we've set up our salespeople, we've set up our round robins, we've set up our stages, let's talk about alerts for a moment. Then we're going to talk follow-up chains, and then we're going to see how everything kind of comes together. Now in system, this is a function that really is not only functional for what we're going to talk about today and defining and alerting staff members, whether you're a manager, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're somebody who supports the sales department on the service side of the business. In system alerts, there's a series of bold terms that represent functions or areas of the business, maybe departmental functions. As I'm looking at this, I can sign myself up to be, assuming I have access to this, or if your manager has access to this, I will want to make sure that you're getting the alerts that you need. But if I check a box, I'm signing myself up to be notified via text, via email, or via pop-up in Lightspeed, or in some cases, we're going to see updates on the mobile app, or I might see all of those based on specific things that are happening. So for example, a unit has arrived somewhere in the business that matches something my customer's looking for. And I want to know when that happens. I want a text, I want an email, I want an alert. And I can even narrow it down to 3 criteria: match, year, make, and model. Or maybe it just has to be make and model that matches. Or maybe it has to be red. Maybe that's the only thing I care about. If it's red, I want to know about it. So maybe it's just one match. But I'm setting up the system to alert me when something happens. Do I have a follow-up? Do I have a unit that's arrived? Do I have a customer that's arrived somewhere in the business? Maybe one of the folks that I've been working with on the sales floor has now arrived in the service department to get his vehicle worked on, or he's at the parts counter buying a spark plug. I may want to know about those things. But in the context of today's CRM and sales lead management functionality, basically I want to know when a lead drops into the system. Where is it here? Follow-ups. When did a lead drop into the system, and when do I need to follow up with that person? I want to be notified on the mobile app. I want Lightspeed to tell me. I want an email. I want a text, and I want a high priority attached to it. Now, some folks will tell me, well, how do I know it's high priority? My text message didn't really say that. Well, the little pop-up in Lightspeed that comes up on the screen will be lit up in red, telling you, drop everything, take care of this. If it's yellow, it's kind of like, yeah, thanks for letting me know. I've got to finish what I'm doing, but I'll get to it. If it's green, it's like, cool. Thanks for the notification. But those severities will kind of drive my attention to the appointment, to the follow-up, so that I can apply my utmost urgency or less most urgency to the thing. Okay, so now that we've got alerts turned on based on the things that are important for me or for my staff to know about, last thing I'm going to talk about in setups is follow-up chains. And this is a pretty broad subject, so I'm just going to introduce it to everybody. We're going to go to sales lists and sales follow-up chains. And this is going to matter going back to the idea of making sure we're following up appropriately. There's a lot of discussion. I'm sure that this is something that will come up at NPDA, at the trade shows. I've heard of this at AIM. I've heard of this in a lot of circles, that we in the recreation space just are not very good at following up in a timely fashion. And when I say that, we're comparing ourselves to the automotive scene, right?
Hey, Tierney.
Yes, sir.
Before you go on, maybe just touch on follow-up chains. That there's actually 2 levels of these. There is the very minimal level that you get if you do not pay for the CRM, and then if you have the CRM enabled, you get a whole nother level of these.
Yeah. So if you're not using CRM, you're going to get, if a lead comes from your website or comes from somewhere online and it drops into Lightspeed, it will generally meet one of 2 criteria. It's going to meet some of the OEM's lead disposition requirements, meaning when a lead drops into Lightspeed, does it text on your behalf, and does it meet a specific OEM's requirement for follow-up? So we do allow that with just the sales module. You don't need CRM to comply with those things. And it sets up your first response to the consumer on your behalf. And it might also help to drive a little bit of an appointment or reminder to the salesperson to then call the customer and follow up with them, even if you're not using CRM. Is that what you're referring to, Mark? Yep. Okay. And then going above and beyond that, if you subscribe to the CRM solution, you can expand on the initial follow-up and have multiple follow-ups and multiple steps in the journey towards the sale. And what we see on this screen is an example of that journey. So when a lead drops in from, let's just say, Facebook. So somebody goes to your Facebook page, requests some information. The lead is generated on that leads, quotes, and deals screen, and a follow-up chain gets assigned to that lead as a result. 30 minutes after the lead hits Lightspeed, it's already sent out a text message on your behalf to the customer. That may suffice to meet some of the OEM's lead disposition requirements, but it also lets the consumer know that you care because it's responded to them. Now, it is an automated communication. Maybe shortly after that text message goes out, an appointment's going to show up on the salesperson's calendar to actually call the customer. Now, in this particular example, that appointment shows up on my calendar 2 hours after the lead showed up there. And I'm going to say that's probably a little bit too long to wait, right? I think it's probably better that we call that customer within potentially minutes of that lead arriving. Under the guise that folks are now shopping quite a bit online, right? So folks are looking at motorcycles, they're looking at RVs, they're looking at boats online, and they're sending out requests for information. And if you don't respond quickly, well, they can just move on to the next dealer. And consumers do. And I'm one of those consumers, and I did. When I bought my last motorcycle, I reached out to a dealer, send them a couple of requests for information. Also called the dealer, and I sat on hold, and nobody ever picked up. Nobody responded to my request for information, so I went to another store and bought my Kawasaki from Jeff Emig Superstore. But nonetheless, so the timeliness is going to be important. We're going to talk about that more in detail in a little while. But as the clock continues to tick, other members of your team, like the sales manager, might get an update saying this is happening. There's a lead going on. Your salesperson is following up, or maybe they're not. Service writer gets an update. F&I person gets an update. One of those updates, well, service writer might get a communication saying, let's prepare this unit for delivery. Let's get a battery in it. Let's get fuel in it. Let's get it clean. F&I person gets a communication saying, let's prepare paperwork. Make sure that all the paper's ready so we can get the customer out the door and get them smiling. And on through that cycle. And we're going to see how this applies to that lead workflow process in just a moment.
Quick question for you, Brian, there just on the follow-up chains. The fourth amigo, Andrea Chappelle, asked the question, is that the best place to see all of the follow-up chain in one spot, or is there a separate report to run so that if they wanted to just look at all of their settings?
That's a great place to go. It's funny you bring that up. One of the questions that I had with a dealer last week on an AI command center demo was they wanted to explore their stages and their follow-up chains, and we used AI to start asking some questions about it. And it'll actually produce information. So the AI command center is a great resource as well. We're going to talk about that in more detail in a moment. But in terms of the reporting, that brings up a good point. I'd have to say, in terms of the way you can report off of those, you could see some of that information in leads, quotes, and deals. You're not really going to see the setups for follow-up chains there, but you might see the result of follow-up chains impact on leads, quotes, and deals under custom report and leads, quotes, and deals. I'd have to probably do some exploration on that, but that's a good question. We may have to explore in more detail what that looks like from a reporting perspective. What do you guys think?
I was just digging into all custom reports to see if that database, or if there was a database we could report on, but I don't see anything in there. As I told Andrea in my text reply, it's kind of something that I'm probably going to be working on in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So if you go into leads, quotes, and deals, or if you go into system and all custom reports and you just search for the word follow, there are some canned reports that are looking at follow-up details, and you might explore those as either a base for your potential custom report, or even run some of those, and it might answer the question you have.
I think we'd probably your best way to track that today is just going to be look at an individual customer who a follow-up chain has been assigned to and see what the communication record looks like, but it does not look like there's kind of broad-based reporting on that system today. I would say that if, we have a follow-up chain assigned to somebody and it's not firing for some reason, then we can take those specific details to support and figure out why. But I don't think there's a broad-based way to do that.
Perfect. Well, let's take some of what we learned in some of those setups, some of the basic functions, whether you're setting up a salesperson, using round robins, follow-up chains, alerts, the stages, and what does it actually look like in the sales process. So we're going to go through an exploration of a deal, look at that insights tool that we spoke about, talk about the alerts and when does a salesperson or an F&I person or somebody else in the business know about a thing that's happening, and then also put that in the context of even the mobile experience and show you how you can use multiple tools to make sure that you're following up appropriately and that you're answering those phone calls and the leads when Brian Tierney's looking for his next KX. Don't leave him on the line.
Yeah,
anyway,
like
so
yeah, like 327 maybe.
327. Yeah, heck yeah. I'm debating on what oil to run, man. I know we've talked about clots before, but I do love the smell of that 927. Although here in Utah, when it's cold, there are some issues with 927 separating from the gas, right? So I've known some folks blow up motors because of that. So anyway, I may stick with clots, the R30.
All works.
R50. Yeah. Well, all right. So we're looking at Mr. Jeff Emig. He's the owner of Jeff Emig Superstore, and he's doing some Secret Santa shopping. And he was on your Dealer Spike website the other night looking at a Maverick that you have for sale. And he puts his name and a question into a form, hits the send button. His name shows up as the buyer, and his wife, Jenny, I don't know if that's actually her name. I don't think he's married anyway. But so Jenny, in this case, is the co-buyer, and she's probably really the one that's green lighting the deal. So her name shows up on here too. And the source where that lead came from, Dealer Spike, Facebook, directly from Kawasaki, or from, in this case, BRP, the source, where that lead come from. And we didn't talk about sources when it comes to setups. I skipped that. We should probably talk about that. Maybe I'll come back to that in a moment. But when that lead drops into Lightspeed, based on round robins, whether it's vehicle types or whether it's just simply an alphabetized list of salespeople, Brian gets assigned that lead. He's in charge of following up. Now, in the center of the screen, the Maverick that Jeff's looking at, your make, model, price, is attached to the lead. And at the bottom of the screen is where all my pricing lives. So we know all those things. Monthly payment, margin, and cost on the bottom right. Now, when that lead drops into Lightspeed, based on the follow-up chains that we've assigned, and based on alerts that are happening, and then based on the Insights Hub, there's a lot of things that are going on, and even the calendar tool. We'll look at all of those things in conjunction with this communications tab. So as I pull up communications, now whether you're using CRM or not, you're going to have access to communications. Now you may be just using email communications, you may be using text, you may be using both. But as we explore this visual, you probably already know that the green boxes are the outbound text or email to the customer, that I may have clicked the send message button, send a text or email from the deal screen, or we may employ follow-up chains to do that. We'll come back to that in a moment. And when Jeff responds or the customer responds, the blue box is the response back to this panel. So the entire audit chain of the digital conversation is captured and saved in the deal. It's also saved to the customer record for future reference. On that subject, if we go over to System and we go to Customer Hub, this is where I can go if I wanted to, if I'm a concierge person, if I'm managing a desk of watching inbound and outbound communication, maybe I'm the person answering the phone, maybe I'm a BDR person in the business, variety of things that I might be using this for. This is showing me real-time communication that's going on across the different customers and all the digital conversations that are going on inside the business. And I've highlighted Jeff Emig, and we can see that conversation that is happening in the deal screen.
Brian.
And if everybody just went to go find that screen themselves, I believe it's on a new release we haven't all quite got yet.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
That's what I was going to say is two things. One, it's got to be enabled in security. And two, there's only, I think, about 150 dealers that actually have this. If you look up in the taskbar on Tierney's computer there, you can see that's 2026-08. I believe that the communication hub is going to be re-enabled in version 08. But if you're on 07, there's only a small number of people who have it.
Well, I just let
Could
the
be
cat
within
out
a
of the
few
bag.
weeks, hopefully, or a couple weeks or a month or so. But
Thanks, guys. Thanks for backing me up. Shows what I
No,
know.
we provided a bunch of feedback. So if you kind of use this early days and you saw some stuff in there that it was just kind of wonky, then working with Michelle, we came up with a bunch of great fixes for that. And like I said, I think that's going to be in the August update.
Okay. And I will say, Mark, and I probably have noticed some of your feedback, because I will say when I first opened this up a month ago or something like that, it seems to be a little different than what I remember from 30 days ago. Actually, it's quite cool right now. So folks, I think you're in for something special once that gets into your system. But what you do have is, if you go to, just for context, if we go to System and Customers and I go to the Communications tab, and any one of those customers, I can see the back and forth digital footprint that's happening in real time on the customer record, even if I'm not looking at the deal, the repair order, the parts special order that's attached to that conversation. So related somewhat to the Customer Hub, but you're in for a treat when that gets released. So coming back to the deal screen and the Communications tab, and really to touch on the follow-up chain and why it matters. Well, follow-up chains, as we already established, is a way that I can set up a cadence, a workflow management solution, automation, and communication. And one of the salespeople that I used to work with here at Lightspeed used to use the term the gift of automation, which I thought was an eloquent way to apply it, and say, if we can let the DMS or the business management solution handle some of the clerical work for you, all the better. And that's what this does. So as I open up that sample that we kind of saw before, when that lead drops in from Facebook, from the OEM, from the website, 30 minutes after it hits the system, it's already texting on your behalf. It's scheduling appointments on your calendar to follow up. It's letting your sales manager know that there's an instance occurring. It's setting up appointments with the service writer and the service people to get this vehicle prepared for work. Where do all those appointments land as those assignments are happening? Well, that's on the Lightspeed calendar. So there's a little calendar icon in the upper corner of the Lightspeed screen that if I press that button, it's going to take me to a calendar view, which suffices for a number of different activities that are going on in the business. Now, I'm a technician. I'm a salesperson. I sweep the floors. I run across town and get pizza for the boss. So I do lots of things. But underneath my name, every time I'm assigned an appointment, call the guy, prepare paperwork, send a text message, deliver to the guy. The appointments are showing up on my calendar, so I know what I need to accomplish for the day. And based on permissions, I may also see if some of my colleagues who are sharing their calendar with me, so that maybe we can work collaboratively together to make sure that we're providing the best solution, the best service, and following up appropriately to our customers. So this is where some of that appointment management goes into the system. We're going to see one other place in a moment.
One more piece there too. I think the calendar was added about 4 years ago. If you had your account in Lightspeed longer than that, you may not have access to that because it wasn't granted automatically. I have found a lot of long-term users in Lightspeed that I go to click on it and I'm like, it's not there.
Good point. So this is one of those things as we continue to roll out Customer Hub and Calendar and other elements of the software. And I think, Mark, you've talked about this in past webinars. Do an audit of your security profiles, because as things get introduced to the software, you don't get those assigned to your profile by default. So on a monthly cadence, it's a good idea to go into, if you have access to security, go in there and just make sure you have the latest and greatest, and then assign those accordingly, right? So kind of an audit of those things.
Yeah, typically what I do, since I've got global access, is when the new releases come out, I'll go into security and just look and see what's grayed out. And then that kind of tells me what new functionality has been added, and then figure out who in the store needs that.
Awesome. So as those appointments are being assigned, then the goal is that all of the partners in the dealership are working collaboratively together to help Jeff buy his Maverick, right? One of the challenges that we know, having spent most of my career in a dealership, is communication is a struggle. And we even have challenges with communications here at Lightspeed. It's just a normal challenge that all businesses have, is communication. And if we can automate some of that, it's going to help. But I still encourage everybody to get in front of your colleagues and still communicate face to face. That's going to help. But all of these appointment reminders and alerts that are happening, whether it's desk or mobile, are helping you to drive you towards making sure that you're answering the questions and following up and answering the phone and emails and text messages and leads in an appropriate manner.
Ryan, do you mind taking 10 seconds to just show people how to add a group calendar? I think a lot of people go to the calendar, but they seem like it doesn't work for them, but it's because they never created the first calendar to work in.
Okay. Yeah. So what I might do is I might come into the calendar view, and if I want to see, do I have access to somebody else's calendar? I can see who might potentially be sharing their calendars globally by pressing the People's Calendar button, and I can pick and choose what person do I want to add to my calendar list. And then I can add them to the group that I'm assigning. We'll talk about groups in a second. So I'm kind of building a group here. And I'm going to save. So I've just added one additional guy. Connor doesn't have anything under his name yet, but he's about to. We're going to click and drag some things and put him on his calendar. So now he's got some work to do. But going back to the group, so view my calendar. And if I click on view my calendar, I'm going to hit my default group preference. And to be honest, it's been a minute since I've done this. Set current calendar as a group. I'm forgetting
like
how
a sales manager who's going to oversee their team, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to hit view my calendar. I'm just looking at mine. I'm going to view people's calendars, but I'm forgetting, to be honest, I'm forgetting where that set up the group lives. Do you guys remember?
I don't remember. That's what I was looking for. I actually, in the chat, I just posted another webinar. I believe that you did a couple years ago, just kind of diving into the calendar, but
it's been a minute. Default group pref. You know what? I'm going to have to probably refer back to that webinar. Now it is on our YouTube channel. It's going to go into more detail. It's been a minute since I practiced this, so I can't remember how we set up that initial group. And I wonder, there's probably somebody from Lightspeed watching this right now, screaming at me. But man, I'm going to have to come back. I'll follow up.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with the group. Matter of fact, let's do this. Let's cheat. Let's phone a friend. We're going to hit the get help button and show you how, when you run into the same kind of situation like Mr. Lightspeed expert here who can't tie his own shoes. Let's go here. We're going to go to knowledge. Calendar groups. And I'm sure the information is here.
Page not found.
So we may follow up with this after. I'm going to look up a document. I'll share it with you, Mr. Lucas, and we can forward this on to the team. And
looks like it's right there under setup. Scroll down just a hair. Keep going. Set up user groups on the calendar. So if you go there, you can click into that documentation and read through it a little bit more. But
yeah. Thanks, Mr. Lucas. Put me on the hot seat. It's good for me. But awesome. So now that we've got the calendar, we've got appointments assigned there, we're following up appropriately with our customers. Let's talk about where some of the analytical data lands so that me as a manager or me as a salesperson can see all of this in real time instead of having to go back to my leads, quotes, and deal screen and jump in and out of every deal. Where can I go as a one-stop shop to provide me the context? Well, it's the insight dashboards. Now, salespeople have their own insights. Sales managers have their own insights. And what's the difference? Well, manager gives me a bit of a larger view. It shows me number of units sold. It shows me revenue for the business. It shows me profitability. Whereas a salesperson, I'm looking specifically at my stuff. I can't really see my colleagues. I can't really see what the manager sees. So we're going to look at both views and get an idea of why it matters and what it means. So we're going to go back to sales, and I'm going to open up salesperson insights, and then we're going to look at sales manager insights and really explore the difference. So as I am a salesperson and I'm managing my own personal leads, again, I'm only going to see my stuff. I'm seeing my pipeline, which is 14 deals compared to the 62 total deals that were in the system, and I can see where I'm getting stuck. I get to the demo stage, and maybe it's because I stink. I don't know, but the customers vanish and they don't come back. So maybe I need to go talk to my boss about getting that Old Spice, or maybe I need to figure out how to get better at moving from the demo to the next step in the process. But I can clearly see a pattern. And ultimately, as I get those revenue numbers down to the bottom, that's where my commission comes from. Who do I need to follow up with in the next 7, 30, or 120 days based on leads coming into the business? And I do have some drill down capability to see the deal or the appointment that's applied to that follow-up message to me on Insights. And I can click into the deal and review it. I can also see what appointments are overdue. Looks like I'm missing all of my appointments, so I can go back and review those as well, drill into the communications tab and follow up accordingly. But it gives me a good finger on the pulse, a single screen that I can manage my pipeline. I have access to my calendars. I also have access to value guides and the leads, quotes, and deals screen from here. Now, where this is different from the manager dashboards is if I go to sales manager insights, I see a pipeline view, but I'm seeing a holistic view of all of the sales staff. So 62 deals instead of 14. I'm also seeing a little bit more insights into who's following up. And if I've set a metric that I want 85% of the time for my my deals to be followed up on, my leads to be followed up on, right now my staff is at 22%. So we have a serious problem. We're not following up, and I can see that right here. I also see is my staff hitting the goals to where we move a lead to a specific stage before we turn it to a manager or we let the customer walk? Or what number of deal or leads actually become sold units? I may have a percentage and a goal tied to that, and I can see are my sales staff hitting those goals? What opportunities do we have to follow up? Text, email, deliver to today, and which ones are overdue because we were busy? Which future appointments do we have? And I can see how each person is performing within their respective categories. How many units have we sold? What's our current revenue numbers? And what's our gross profit? So from a single page, I can see what's going on the sales floor using some of these analytical tools.
We did get the answer to those groups too.
We did. Okay. Let's talk about it.
So Tina actually came up with it, Amigo number 12.
Thanks, Tina.
If you jump into the calendar,
okay, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it just real quick since we're here.
Yeah.
Click on People's Calendars is the button.
People's Calendars.
And where
bottom.
you have Select Group, you open up that drop-down menu in the middle of that.
Create.
And then create new group.
How about that? All right. Well, Tina, let's make a note of her, and we're going to send her some Lightspeed swag.
Yeah.
I'll get with marketing. We'll send some stuff to you. Thanks for saving your Uncle Brian here. I appreciate you sending me a lifeline. Egg on my face, folks, but thanks, Tina. We'll send you some stuff. Awesome. So that hopefully that answers the question, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So again, just kind of reviewing what we had just talked about, and maybe we'll take some additional questions. I might take some insights if you guys have some to apply. Using some of the functions we talked about, setting up your salespeople, setting up your stages. Sources, by the way, we haven't talked about. Let's just dip into it for a moment. If you go into sales, lists, and sources. This is really defining how did those leads get to you? Did it come from the internet? Was it a walk-in customer? Was it somebody who called you on the phone? So those are really the three types of leads that could arrive in your system. There's really, I'm sure people could invent other ways, but those are the three primary ways. Somebody walked in, they called you, or it came from the internet. Now, if I go into, we'll just grab ARI here. No, I don't think they're around anymore. I think Dealer Spike consumed them. This is an internet lead. And if I click my internet source, you might see there's quite a list of different sources available. If you're interested in adding sources to your list of sales list sources so that you start to get leads from those companies, you're certainly welcome to set those up. If you have questions about them or need some guidance and assistance, our support team will be happy to help you with those. Once you've set up your source, which sometimes requires things like source IDs, they may require some entry of a dealer ID number somewhere in the system. They may require you to share a dealer ID with the source provider. So there's a number of things that might apply to the sources as you're building them in your system. They may not just work by default. You may have to actually pick up the phone and call somebody. But if you do need help, reach out to our support team and we'll guide you through that. In addition to having the source built, you can also define what follow-up chain cadence do I want to apply to that. So when a lead drops into Lightspeed, do I want a Facebook-related chain applied? Do I want something related to the brand that's showcased by that lead source? If it's a BRP lead source, well, I probably want messaging to go out based on BRP product lines. And we can kind of define those using follow-up chains, and we talked a little bit about where those live in the system a moment ago. Assign those as a default. When those leads start dropping in, the appropriate messaging starts to apply to them. How are we doing for questions, folks?
I'm struggling to keep up right now, so I'm.
Oh no, that's not good.
We're doing good.
No,
One thing just that you pointed out earlier, Brian, just to show people on sources or stages or F&I, next to that little drop-down menu, there's a little button that looks like a menu or a list. And so that's an easier way to get to those drop-down menus to customize them. If you just see like under source where you got Dealer Spike, that little just right to the right of that drop-down menu.
Yes. Okay. Got it. Okay. I was
Yep.
having a little trouble following you. Okay. So yeah, there looks like a little piece of paper.
Yep.
And if you hover over it, it says open list. If you click that, and there's some various places in the deal screen, to your point, Mr. Lucas, it'll take you to that location. Again, permissions are going to be necessary to get to it, but good point.
We also had a question about how to delete groups, but come on, we just figured out how to add them.
And I just figured that one out by trial and error. But when you remove all of the people that you've assigned to the group, it will delete the group. So you just have to remove all the individuals.
Move the people. Okay. Noted. You know what? Next time we have this subject come up, we're going to be experts. So that's the trial by fire method, right? So again, thanks, Tina. Awesome. Well, perfect. So we've talked a little bit about the settings, how they apply to the deal screen. One other thing that I might just mention, and we might go back into follow-up chains and offer some additional context, but sometimes questions that I'll get when I'm showcasing CRM or showcasing lead management is the stage definition. So going back to just those phrases, greet the customer, identify the unit, collect the deposit. Not only do I use those to identify where I am as a salesperson in the process so that, again, my manager can see where we are we moving the needle towards closing the sales, and then we apply those colors to the insights tools and to the leads, quotes, and deal screen. But they also change the cadence of conversation. They have a direct impact on what's going on with regard to follow-up chains. So when I move from greet, which during the greet stage, it's the, hi, how are you? How many kids do you have? What are you looking for? Do you have a motorcycle? That's a different conversation than what's happening at collect the deposit. Hey, bro, you're going to love this motorcycle. I'll see you at the track. Let me get that $500 from you. That's a different conversation than how many kids do you have, right? So what's happening when you get to those different stages is it changes the automated communication that's going on in the communication tab. And how does it do that? Well, let's take a peek back at follow-up chains and offer some additional flavor to it. If we go into our example, when I'm building a layer of follow-up, let's go to deal. Let's use this task. Let's edit for a moment. So we can define what department does the appointment apply to. It's a sales appointment as opposed to service or parts. We're not alerting somebody in another department of this instance. We're alerting somebody in the sales department. And who? Is it the salesperson? Is it the F&I person? Is it the manager? We want to alert. Follow-up type, is it a task? Is it an appointment? Is it a phone call? Is it an email that we need to have done at this stage in the process? And subject and transition. So what is the subject? Well, that kind of is allowing me to see in this cadence a very high level definition of what is the step that we're taking in this process. Is there a transition from lead to quote to deal? We can define that. And then the stage. When we get to a particular stage, do we want this trigger to happen? In other words, do I want this customized message to go out when we get to collect the deposit? The, hey, bro, I'll see you at the track. We'll share some beers. Whatever messaging you want to go out at that point, the stage name can define that. So the conversation as it shifts from one step in the deal to the next is pertinent and the customer can follow along and it sounds a little more natural to them and less robotic. So worth mentioning. Awesome. Well, that's going to take us kind of full circle. And now we're going to take what we've learned in setting up those stages, sources, follow-up chains, setting up the alerts, managing the appointments appropriately, and the leads are now flowing into the system and appointments are showing up on the calendar. And we're going to learn a little bit more about how we did. Did we perform well? We saw some of those performance metrics on the Insights tool. Well, let's look at one of the newer tools that's going to reveal some information about your business in the AI Command Center. And I've prepared some prompts to test. And if you guys have some prompts to test, really may put us on the spot, but we're going to try it. So I'm going to pull up the AI Command Center, which just for context, for those of you that haven't heard of this before, and we've been marketing it very heavily, so chances are you've probably heard of it. But the idea is it's going to allow somebody who's less savvy with reporting. So I know reporting has been a subject that we, the Three Amigos, have really focused on. We provided a lot of context. And we hope we've made some reporting experts out of you all in the process. But the idea behind AI Command Center is it takes a little bit of that expertise off of the plate of the user and allows me as a less nuanced reporting expert to walk up to the Lightspeed system and ask a natural language question and glean similar information maybe additional information that typical historical traditional reports couldn't provide or can't provide simply because I'm not skilled enough to get those things. So it basically allows me to have a conversation with my DMS, just like if Mark and Brian and I were sitting down on a bench and chatting about the new KX327. It allows you to have that conversation with your DMS using natural language. It feels a little more natural, and it serves up responses that seem a little bit more natural based on that dialogue. So let's take a look and see what it looks like. I'm going to open up Lightspeed. This is a slightly different environment, so it's going to ask me to log in here. And we're going to do that. And as I open up Lightspeed once more, it's going to ask me for my blood type and how many children do I have, and do I want to give one over to the AI gods. It's coming. Here we go. No, I don't. But thanks for the offer. All right. So now we're looking at Lightspeed, and this looks familiar to everybody. But what's a little bit different from this screen from what we've seen just a moment ago is this little AI button at the very top right corner of the screen. There's been some debate as to where that button lives. We won't talk about that necessarily today, but I'm going to launch AI Command Center in this sample environment. Now, going back to the idea that, yes, those reports are going to stay there. There's over 350 standard issue reports that come with Lightspeed, and as you add additional reports, those are not going away. So everybody's report library stays exactly the way it exists today. It's not changing. But this is adding an additional layer of context. And as you're looking at this screen, it's kind of like taking ChatGPT or Gemini, or in this case, Claude, whatever your favorite AI model is, and putting it into your Lightspeed system. Now, a few questions before we get into the meat and potatoes about it. A lot of folks will say, well, is my data secure? Is it being exposed to Google and all of the different online platforms? The answer is no. It's still safe and secure, just like the rest of your data. We're not sharing it with any other dealerships. It is just your data that exists inside of your DMS, and responses and answers are built on top of your data. So when you ask questions about KX327s and you don't have them in your system, it's not going to understand what you're asking about because it doesn't exist in your system, just for example. Now, as I'm looking at this screen, the first thing I see is how can Lightspeed help you today? So it's waiting for me to enter a question. And you'll notice over on the left panel is a history of questions that I've asked the AI tool in the past. And it stays there in case I have to refer back to them. If I want to see what some of those dialogues and some of those questions are, I can click on them and it brings up the results from prior conversations. And I can also save prior conversations. We use the term plays if it's a question that I ask over and over and over again, like show me margins on deals for this month, and then the month changes and show me margins on deals for this month. I might set up a recurring question we call a play that I can ask over and over and over again. But for us today, I'm just going to ask a simple question, and I've got some other ones prepared, and you won't have to sit and watch me type as much. So I'm going to copy and paste some of these, but I might ask a question like my top 5 best-selling makes in July of 2026, not 2, and show me the overall margin per make, or something like that. So as I asked the system a question, again, natural language, I didn't have to hunt around into a list of reports, and I didn't have to build a SQL statement and do anything clever. I'm just asking a simple question like I would my bros. Now what's happening
you're really going to put me out of a job here, Tierney.
I'm not trying to.
I'm not happy about this.
So it gave me a fairly simple question, or a fairly simple response. I actually don't like that response, but when I asked it a question, what I wanted to kind of point to is you'll notice there's a little dialogue happening. It's kind of telling me it's thinking about the question. If I click this little caret over on the right panel, it's summarizing the question. It's trying to make sense out of my natural language, and it's going to take that natural language, drop it into the SQL environment, and pull all the ones and zeros that are gleaning the data to respond to my question. And then it takes those ones and zeros, puts it back into an English translation, and then it's going to put it up onto the screen so that it'll provide me the context and the detail. So there's a little bit of an exploration of what's happening in the background, and I probably phrased this question terribly. Now let's do something a little different. I'm going to ask a slightly varied question here. It's composing the response. There we go. Okay, that's a little more.
One of the things I have found about this is that it's starting to get better about, looking for things like wholesale transactions and just kind of not including that content from the beginning instead of, one, you get the results and then you're like, it's not quite right. We got to work on it. It's definitely learning about how a power sports dealership operates.
Right. Yeah, and I think Taylor had mentioned this in the webinar yesterday. I've seen this mentioned in social media circles written by Taylor, who's Taylor Alis, who's the gentleman that's really overseeing this project at Lightspeed. And quite honestly, the AI Command Center existed in some fashion back in January, and it's evolved over time to, again, exactly what you're saying, Mark, to provide more contextual answers based on what some of the pioneer users of the AI tool have been asking. We at Lightspeed have a pretty good idea of what makes sense to the dealer, but we're not in the dealership on a daily basis. So sometimes our version of a question might differ slightly from what the actual boots on the ground questions look like. And so to your point, it is learning and it's generating responses based on what actually is more meaningful to the folks in the dealership versus the people at Lightspeed building the program. Interesting.
Hey,
yeah.
You did have a question from Elena. So
okay.
Said, if I were to send some info into the AI to teach it, will that teach the whole company AI or mine only?
That's a good question. I'm hesitant to answer that question. I might defer that to Taylor, but I'm going to say it's going to learn based on your data, based on maybe your experience. Because one other thing that's pertinent to know about this is it is permission controlled. The conversation that's captured and saved on the left panel that we saw as an example is all based on my dialogue and my experience with the AI tool. Other folks in the dealership are not going to see my questions and responses. So I think I'm going to probably defer to Taylor, but if you don't mind, maybe we'll follow up with the answer to that question via email.
And just a quick question related to the history. Do you know if it drops off or archives after so many days? And so, it's important if you want to keep a prompt you really like to turn it into a play, but do you know if it archives or removes itself after so long?
Some of these questions go back into April. So where are we? That's 4 months ago or so. So that's another good question. I don't know the answer to that. I have to think that it might, but older is what it's defined as here. So anything prior to last week is listed as older. But I do have questions that I asked way back in April, so they're still there.
Okay.
I do have one other question, and I think this is more to Lucas maybe than Tierney, and completely unrelated at this point in time. But you were just talking about permissions, and I noticed a few months ago that in security now that there are some permissions on the P&L to where you can allow a manager to run their P&L just for parts or just for service. How long has that been there, Lucas?
I want to say about a year and a half, a year to a year and a half. That feature has been there. So when they go, but I do think that there was a minor bug, or the feature wasn't built where they could still run the consolidated P&L also.
Okay.
But that recently, I think two releases or 3 releases ago, they mentioned that being resolved. But underneath the security setting in the P&L, you can pick the specific department, and then they only now will have access to that. They still don't see the GL history, which is I think very pertinent. Keep in mind the way that you have your chart of accounts displayed. Many of you that are in participating 20 groups, or from a tax accountant perspective, we like to have owner wages separate from manager wages and then from production staff. And so they might get a little bit more information related to, some of those payroll numbers by giving them access to that, which, different people are going to have different thoughts revolving that. But they still don't see the history underneath it if they were to open it up and, to see the actual employee name and the transactions. But it's a newer feature there.
I just thought it was interesting because, we could push for more transparency with employees if they really, if someone's going to be a manager, I think they need to be able to see those financials.
I would agree on that point too, is you got to teach them how to run the business, right? And the only way to do that is if they can see some of it.
Tierney, one other question. David asked, what is the cost on the AI Command Center? If I remember right, it was $199, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, so $199 is the cost for the AI Command Center. But if you do have additional questions about if you've got multiple rooftops, there might be some individual context per dealership that might apply to, but definitely reach out to your Lightspeed account representative and they'll be able to give you some additional details. couple of other questions that I've had from folks as I've demonstrated this solution before is, can you export the data into CSV? The answer is yes, you can. There's a little drop down arrow at the top of each of the queries or the responses to the queries. So I could download that as a CSV. I can export the data. I've had folks even ask, can I put this into a PowerPoint? You can. So it does give you the ability to export the data and put it into a presentation format that you can use in front of your board members or on webinars or whatever you might be in terms of front-end public speaking. And it also, as you can see, I just asked it to put into a graphic image the data, which I'm a monkey brain person. I like colors and I like graphics. So if I want to see things like what are my top best-selling performing salespeople, I can see that in a graphic image. I can also see the stages based on those colorways that we have. I had a dealer ask me the other day, can I see stage-related metrics in the sales department? And can I see that in a graphic image? You can. But one of the things that's happening here also, and I just noticed this going back to maybe one of the questions, does the AI tool learn with you? Well, the question that I asked to get this graphic, I asked this same question a couple days ago, and today it did something different. So I'm feeling like it's learning. Now, the question that I asked was, can you show me a bar graph of the top 5 best performing front-end salespeople along with total revenue per salesperson? So that's the question that's right here. So when it read that question, it then asked me, well, are you looking at front-end revenue and were you looking at a specific component to the deal? Now, when I asked the question a couple days ago, it didn't ask me that. So it seems to be learning that I might be looking at a particular area of the deal or a particular area of the software, and it's asking me for additional context. I gave it the context, and then it produced the result. So when you ask it a question, it might want to know more from you before it serves up an answer. And I guess that's just like a human being would ask. If I ask Mark a question like, what's his favorite motorcycle? He's going to ask me, well, are we talking 70s, 80s, 90s, or now? Right?
16.
I don't know.
I'm 16.
There you go. But, going back to the dialogue. So I'm just sitting down here at a bench having a conversation with colleagues, and the AI Command Center kind of duplicates that. And so I ask it a question, it gives me an answer, and then maybe I want more in context. So it's serving up some examples of what additional context would you like to know? Well, let's click on the additional context. So it's giving me some questions that I can ask. And again, it goes through and it tries to make sense out of the natural language, puts it into ones and zeros, and then spits it out as a natural language response. But really kind of a different perspective on reporting. Similar data that I could get from our traditional reports, just in a different experience. And I think as more and more of us have become way too reliant on AI, Gemini's my flavor, this is kind of becoming the expected experience when it comes to gleaning information. And it'll be interesting to see how this continues to evolve. But
one quick question there, Brian. You might have already mentioned this, but I really like how in the visual it also tells you the context and notes from where it came from, because judgment's important when you're using AI for different things, because what you prompt it will respond with, right? And so make sure to read over the context when you're looking at some of these things to see where it's pulling from, because you may be you're getting exactly what you're asking it for, right? And so sometimes your question could, you might produce a response or an answer that you need a little bit more information from. Something else that I've seen some people do, and I don't know if Brian, if you plan to showcase this or not, but maybe just prompting the system, can you build a performance plan for specific salesperson based on their metrics compared to salesperson B, things like that in the system. But
you can, yeah, it's pretty incredible what it's capable of. It's probably more capable than my capability to ask it questions at this point, but it's been remarkable what I've seen it do. Yeah, great questions. Awesome. I don't know where we are for time, guys. How are we doing for time?
We're about 15 minutes away.
I had one other question for you, just on AI Command Center, and maybe you know the answer to this, or if it's in the works or not. But
yeah,
one of the things that I thought would be interesting on this, now that we have Save Plays, was being able to share that Save Play query with another dealer. So that way, when one dealer looks up and says, here's where I'm at, then they can ask somebody else, and somebody else can get, exactly the same type of answer out of their system? Do you know if we've got to a point where we can share those plays?
I know we can share things across rooftops. If I'm a multi-rooftop business, I can share between my different locations. And I could be wrong on this, but I think the answer that I've heard in that question was that today there isn't a way to share those queries to non-related businesses.
Okay.
But if it's under the same business name, if it's a multi-rooftop, location 1 versus location 2 versus location 3, we can share them across locations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, did you have more on AI Command Center?
That's pretty much it for now. Now, one thing I'll offer is, again, we talked about the $199 a month. We talked about it being permission protected. Right now, the AI Command Center is trained on the sales module exclusively. So it's looking at inventory, it's looking at deal margins, it's looking at CRM related functions. So essentially anything in the sales menu it's looking at. Currently, it doesn't have access to service and parts and accounting, but over the next few months, it is going to have the ability to look across the different modules and departments in your business. So it's going to continue to evolve and become more powerful and offer more solutions as we move forward.
There's one question, and I believe I'm understanding her question, but she's saying, will the AI Command Center run out of data? So I'm wondering if she's referencing when you're using, other AI systems, it will tell you you've used
Tokens?
all of your data for the day, and so you got to wait
Oh,
until the
tokens.
next day.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I have not heard that that's the case. I'm going to say no. And hopefully if there's a Lightspeed person on the call, they'll correct me, but I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit different, Lucas, situation, because this is not integrated with ChatGPT or Gemini. So Lightspeed is actually running the code base. So I think really the limit there is, what server do we have to sit in and when do we run out of compute? But I think the cost is essentially, built into Lightspeed's infrastructure. I think what maybe just kind of getting technical here without going too deep is that, one of the things that's really different with, what we've kind of gotten used to over the last couple of years is that, most of the time we go to Chat or Gemini or Claude or whatever you're used to, but a lot of the new models that are coming out of China at this point in time, they provide you the entire set of software and say, here, you got a computer strong enough to run it, you can run it, and then you're not paying anybody for tokens or compute. It's essentially your computer, your electricity.
Yeah.
And I think that Lightspeed is essentially using their own code base on this.
I'm going to agree with you on that, Mark. For folks that need additional insights, I would encourage you to reach out to your Lightspeed account rep. They'll probably put you in touch with me, and we'll get in touch with some other folks if there's some real deep, nuanced questions. But we'll get you the answers that you need for sure.
So basically, what you're saying is reach out to your people.
Reach out to my people, and I like to think that Mark and Brian are my people too. But I appreciate it, guys.
You had talked a lot today about follow-up chains in the sales deal, and yes. I know we kind of brushed over it in the last meeting, but maybe real quick, you should just point out to everybody that those follow-up chains aren't just for the sales department, that you can also tie those to repair orders as well. So cashier repair order, you can do automated follow-ups. You just want to go through that real quick?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And that's something that a lot of dealerships are starting to lean into now with the CRM experience and service, where anytime we hear CRM, customer relation management, automation, and communication, we automatically think sales, and rightfully so. But follow-up chains also exist in service, so we can set up cadences of a variety of things. One of the popular things that I'm hearing from dealers right now is, I want to be able to have Lightspeed send out a reminder before the event happens, maybe 3 reminders. And incidentally, this, for folks that are using CRM, you're going to see this, but if you go into your preferences, again, access to the system and permissions, of course, but if you go into system preferences, there's a follow-up chain selection, and you can set up appointment reminders for a variety of cadences in the business, a variety of verticals. So whether it's parts, service, or sales, in this case, we're talking service because that's the popular subject right now. I want a reminder to go out to my service customers, in this example, 2 weeks ahead of time to remind them of their appointment. It could go out by email, could go out by text, but could go out by both. Text is generally more received, I think, from folks. But then I want it to go out a day ahead of the appointment, a reminder to say, don't forget about your appointment. And then maybe 1 hour before the appointment. So 3 reminders to my service customers before the event occurs. And why? Well, maybe we have dealerships that are setting up appointments and they're scheduling technicians and they're kind of working their service department around customers that never show up. That's a serious problem. So if we can send out those reminders, chances of those no-shows, it gets reduced. We get a little more activity happening in our service department and generate more revenue. So this coincides with exactly what you're talking about, Mark, is being able to apply follow-up chains to the service experience. And so service is going to have its own follow-up chains, and they may be based on a variety of cadences, like when the estimate gets built, 15 minutes later, a text message goes out thanking the customer, maybe with the hours of operation, the name of the service writer, and a phone number for if you have questions. And then as the cadence continues, additional messages go out to the customer under the guise that I think this happens in certain industries more than others. It seems like sometimes in RV and in marine, vehicles sit in the shop for a little bit longer time than in power sports, maybe in golf. And I could be wrong to say that because I'm sure it's all a matter of the situation or context. But nonetheless, one of the things that I hear from consumers, and you guys probably hear this too, is I dropped my vehicle off for service. It's been there for 30 days and I haven't heard from anybody. So if we can set up automated communication to go out at various intervals during the service cycle, even if it's bad news, like the parts aren't here yet, the warranty's not approved yet, we're not done yet, it's better than silence. Silence will kill service departments. So if we're sending out messages, we keep tempers down, we keep satisfaction up, and we're going to keep those customers coming back. So where does that happen in service? Well, if we go into estimates and repair orders and speak about, let's see if we've got Jeff Emig in here. I know he's in here somewhere. Here he is. He's working on that Maverick he bought. So Jeff has got his vehicle in for service, and we've applied a follow-up chain to that repair order so that 3 service reminders go out before Jeff arrives. During the service cycle, he's getting updates on the appointment cycle, so those follow-up chains are communicating to him in real time, keeping his temper down, letting him know we love him because he's the greatest human being that ever lived. And then ultimately, when the repair order is complete and ready for delivery, Jeff gets a text saying your bike's ready for pickup. Your Maverick's ready for pickup. So that, I think that's a little bit of the color you were looking for, Mark, right?
Actually, I don't, we could go back and look at sales real quick, but on the screen that you were just on, down at the bottom, it did actually have the history. And I think that's kind of what Andre was asking about, what exactly happened. So do we have that for global or do we have that for the sales department as well? Do you know? Can we go look at a sales deal?
Sales in terms of closed appointments and follow-ups? Yeah, we do have that.
I was wondering if we would see that list of actual communications with the customer there and that kind of that clean order.
Now, in this context, we're looking still same customer, maybe in relatively the same vehicle, but the follow-up closed details here are not the service ones; they're the sales ones.
Yeah, so that's what Andrew is asking. Is there a way to kind of audit what's going on? I think this would be a good way to look, and then, if we have a follow-up chain that's not firing for some reason, then be able to go in and say, okay, it's in the chain. Why is it not going out? One of the things that I found, at least with my team, sometimes when texts are not going out, is that somebody has added an extra digit to the customer's phone number, the mobile phone number. And so like what they used to do is they'd have the customer's phone number, and then at the end of it, they put first, number 1 ST to kind of say, this is the number we're supposed to call first. And that actually blew up the outgoing text. But if you write out the word first, FIRST, then the system ignores the text characters like that. And so the phone numbers still work. But
I believe on the customer, you do have the ability to choose preferences as separate fields on the customer record, and whether or not we can actually mark it to them or not. You can turn on and off those settings. I think it's on the general tab.
You might have lost me. What preference are we talking about?
You have privacy settings. I want to say, isn't there preference? Yeah, preferred method of communication as well, where you could set that way. You don't have to put some of that stuff inside the actual field itself. But
okay, okay, that makes sense. Or if a customer opts out.
But up top, if you just want to show everyone what I'm talking about, just go to the cell field and put a phone number in there. Doesn't really matter what.
The phone number.
So you also, if your team wants to identify that as being the first number to call, just at the end of it, after a space, you can type out the word first. And that's kind of an on-screen visual, and the text messaging system will still work. So that doesn't mess in. But if you put another number in there, then it will cause those texts not to go out.
If you do this.
If you do that, it's broken at that point in time.
Interesting.
You can actually put first before or after the number. They both work. It ignores letters, but numbers break it.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that, and I didn't know how to set up groups and calendars either. So we'll learn two things today.
We'll send you a bill.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Your people can pay us later.
That's right. That's right. All right. Do we have a few more minutes, or how are we doing, folks?
2 minutes.
I have a few more if you got a few
2
more.
minutes. Okay. The last little piece I was just going to showcase, and this may be ad nauseum because I know I've spoken about this before in other webinars, whether it's Lightspeed related or the accounting guys. This, I feel like, kind of takes us full circle on some of the things we've learned: retention, marketing, loyalty, driving repeat customers. The customer retention report. So those of you that have seen this before and are tired of hearing Tierney talk about it, you're welcome to disperse. But for those that want to stay and take a look at it, it's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite parts of the Lightspeed system, my favorite report in the system. And Mark's heard me say that a million times. But we're going to go into it. We're going to go to system, and we're going to really reveal, did all of the things that we did to become better at communicating to our customers, did it make a dent? So this report, by the way, lives in system, reports, customer retention. For those of you that are looking at permissions and making sure that you have the thing turned on, that's where that lives. It's kind of in the deepest, darkest dungeon of the system menu. And I'm just going to set a range. So what we're saying is, show me customers that bought from me from period A to B in the past. And I'm setting this up because we're looking at sample data. It's way in the past, so 2017 through 2021, August 1st of. And then I'm going to set the repeat customers August 2 of 2021 through current. And what I'm saying is, hey, Lightspeed, show me people that bought from me in the initial purchase date range that came back a second, third, or fourth time in the second range. And I'm going to focus today, since we've been focused mostly on sales, I'm going to look at the sales department. And if I wanted to pick on my Ducati customers or my Aprilia customers, I could. But in this case, since I'm looking at sample data and there's not that many transactions, I'm going to select all. I'm not going to focus on my VIPs or my Sheffield group or my Brian Lucas accounting guys groups. I'm going to look at everybody. I'm going to look at the detail because I'm curious and I want to sort this by customer name alphabetically, and I generate the data. So what this is showing me in that initial red section, I had 67 people that bought from me in the sales department in that initial time frame. Now, for those 67 people, 26 of those people came back a second, third, or fourth time, which gives me a retention ratio, or my report card, of 38%. Now, I've done some Google Analytics to see what is an acceptable, what should dealerships focus on for retention percentages, and Google tells me somewhere between 40 and 80%. So in my mind, 40 is like a D minus, 80 is like an A, and right now we are failing. In case you were wondering, is 38% a good retention ratio? According to Google, it's not. So we want to get that retention ratio at least to a D minus so that mama's not too mad at us, and we'd love to get it to an A. But I can see a little more context into where those repeat customers spent their money, and to the tune of how often Jeff Emig buys a lot of fan belts from me. But I can also see who those repeat customers are. And in this case, everything is sales department related. So SA points to sales department, how many deals, revenue, total activity for returning customers. And maybe just as important, or maybe more important, those are the non-returners. Those are the ones that bought from me once and didn't come back. And I think, Mark, you might have pointed this out once. It also reveals the fact that I'm terrible about getting phone numbers and email addresses. So there's a good chance for those non-returners, there's no way I'm going to get them back anyway because I don't have any way to reach them. And this reveals that.
Well, while you're talking about that, so real quick, go to System and Preferences. You already know what I'm talking about, I could think.
I think so.
So
I think this is across the business, but we can require, right?
Yes.
And again, we're on the spot here, so we're forgetting. But I think this is in various
Yeah,
places in the
right
system?
there. You were just there. It was under defaults.
Defaults, invoicing defaults. Okay.
So right up there at the top. So disable that function to allow cash sale invoices. So
Okay.
force your employees to get, you spent all that money to get the customer to come in. Do not allow your employees to do cash sale invoices. And they'll tell you, well, the customers don't want to give us their name. Just got to train them on how to get that information.
Yeah.
Hey, we sell products, have recalls all the time. We might need to get a hold of you. So this is how we do that. But yeah, if you want good reporting out of your system, you need to disable that feature.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm going to throw out a thing that you might look for folks that do turn that off, disabling cash invoices. And you may know where I'm going with this, Mark, is there are some clever parts people that figure out if I just create a customer called cash sale, well, then I can use that customer ad nauseum. So as you're reviewing invoicing at the end of the day, if you keep seeing, even though you've turned that off, if you keep seeing cash sale or Jeff Emmett 1,000 times, chances are your staff has figured out a workaround around your roadblock. So keep an eye on that too. Now, there are also permissions that force folks to add email addresses and phone numbers at various places in the system. You can turn that on and off as well, and that'll help to guarantee that you get some of that detail into this report. But long story short is I can take this information, I can send it off to marketing, and I can send them a mass text campaign, a mass email campaign. Of course, that's a licensed feature if that's something you're interested in. Reach out to your Lightspeed account rep, and it's just a way to, again, take all those folks that are returners, send them out a loyalty thank you. For the non-returners, offer them an olive branch, get them back into your store, find out why they didn't do business with you a second time, and earn their business another time, and ultimately get your failing grade into passing territory and make mama happy. So that's kind of the goal that I see with this report.
I started to use this report now, and I work with a dealer group that's got 3 locations, and you don't really know what your baseline is until you can start comparing with other dealers. But having 3 locations, it's been interesting to run that same report and kind of see what the variance is. And for this dealer group, it's about 20 points. But kind of started digging in a little bit, and I'm not going to drop any names here, but we got one brand that we sell out of that dealer group that has a lot of recalls. And so they do get a lot of customer returns, but it's because those customers are coming back to get recall work done. And, it's data's good, but you've also got to really understand what goes in there and what drives that.
Good point. Good point. It's interesting. Well, very good. Well, I know we've taken a lot of everybody's day. We certainly appreciate you joining us once again for another Three Amigos webinar. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Mr. Lucas, Mr. Sheffield. We've gone over a lot of different things, from setting up CRM and some of the basic components to making the thing work. Looked at some lead management workflow and some suggestions, best practices on what Mark and Brian have learned with their clients as well. We had a little bit of an exposure to AI Command Center, and we will continue to evolve that subject over the next few months. We're very excited about that here at Lightspeed. And we looked at our report card. Are we making a dent? Is it making a difference? I like to think so. But we've got the tools to measure it, and some really powerful things that we can share. So we certainly appreciate everybody's attention today.
Thank you, Brian, for putting this together and taking the time to organize it. As I know that you're busy as well, and constantly working with dealers and demos and things to be able to set some time apart for that. So, Mark, do you want to just give a quick 2 minutes on what the next one's going to be about?
Yeah, so next month is going back to the basics. Where all this started is custom reporting, and actually going to build, we won't do it in real time, but I'm going to do this prior to the meeting. We're going to build probably 3 reports that we think each department manager, each GM should be running every week, every couple of weeks, every month, and kind of going through those of what the importance is, why your parts manager, your service manager, your finance manager should be looking at these key areas. And then when we're done, actually we'll share all those report templates with everybody so that you can easily grab them, import them into your system, and hopefully utilize them in managing your store.
Great. If anybody else has any ideas or things that you would like us to dive into, feel free to reach out to us, send us a message. I think we've put our emails in the past. I'll just throw mine in the chat here. Feel free to shoot me an email. And then also just from, I've had a couple dealers that I don't want to make any of this sound like a sales pitch, but I had dealers be like, "Oh, does the accounting guys actually help dealers?" Yeah, yes, we do help dealers if you want to sign up for training or sign up for some accounting help, or if we've mentioned our reporting platform, and then as well as with Brian Tierney, Lightspeed also has great support and things like that. Where if you've been watching these and wondered that, feel free to reach out. Again, we try to make these be value add content versus just another area to see additional products. And so if you guys have questions about a specific area, want to dive deeper, for sure, bring us that feedback. We'd love to look at that with you. And thanks again, gentlemen, for jumping on with us. And Mark, you can let your eyebrows loose, at this point now. So you're free there.
I was going to say, I'm on the opposite end. I have exactly nothing to sell. So I'm not trying to sell a DMS or accounting or I guess it's been a good industry. It's fun, and I enjoy doing this stuff.
I believe that's a different cat we haven't seen before, Mark.
No, that is Spring. So she just discovered a treat that she'd missed about 15 minutes ago during. But actually, this today was sponsored by Revable, so they actually sent me some Revable feline treats. So it was kind of cool from the guys over there.
How about that? Okay, Revable.
So I work hard, so my cat's gonna have a good life.
There you go. There you go.
Well, great. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, folks, for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thanks for your time.
And Tina, I don't think we ever got your contact information. So if you want to email it over to, we'll make sure that one of the Brian sends you a goodie bag.
We'll send you a goodie bag for sure. Thanks for saving us.
All right. Y'all have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. See you.